Today's conversation is focused on Maximo Scheduler and the functionality around Maximo Scheduler. The Graphical Scheduler application is part of the Maximo Enterprise Asset Management suite of applications. So that relationship gives you the end-to-end set of tools necessary to do your work management lifecycle. So you get the work related information in the work order tracking applications, your labor information in those associated records, and then you have this scheduler tool, the graphical scheduling tool that brings that all together. Planners and schedulers can view work orders, PMs, and see that all on a Gantt chart in Maximo. And that's the beautiful thing about this particular application in Maximo. And so the planners and schedulers would use the graphical scheduling application, and the supervisors would use a very similar application called graphical assignments to then drag and drop and make assignments based on the schedule that your planners and schedulers have worked to create. And then taking that further, if you have individuals out in the field, there's also the ability to dispatch work based on a map. We won't look at that particular functionality today, but it's available with the graphical scheduling and graphical assignment. You just need to have the map functionality plugged in. So that leads us to the field technicians that can receive their work on remotely and then provide information associated with that work real time to update information to your dispatchers. There's also a tool that comes with graphical scheduling and graphical assignment that helps to optimize the work scheduling, and that's an optimization tool. It is part of the licensing that is associated with graphical scheduling and graphical assignment. However, it does require a separate server if you want to use that particular product. On to the next slide. One of the bonuses with graphical scheduler and graphical assignment is that you get this visual navigation tool. So it's rather intuitive and shows you the work orders and the task. We'll look at that in just a few moments. You can also have your dependencies between tasks within a work order defined in your job plans, or you can then also you can visually set up those dependencies within the graphical scheduling application. If it's something that is consistently applied time after time, you would probably want to set those dependencies up in your job plans so that you do it once and save it, and it's usable from that point forward and doesn't have to be reset up. You can also use the graphical scheduling tool to apply those dependencies and to spread that work across shifts if you have interruptible work that can be spread across shifts. There's also the manual or automated ability to assign resource or crews and to dispatch those assignments out if you have this the software and the hardware set up for dispatching. Some of the benefits of the graphical scheduling tool and graphical assignment, for that matter, that there's no third-party product related to this. It's all within your Maximo suite of applications. Therefore, implementing Maximo for work management and asset management, you already have Scheduler installed. You may not have the licenses for it, so that's a different topic, but the software itself is there. And the behavior of the software is very similar to Maximo's based behavior as well. So there's a lower learning curve to using the product within Maximo. Your resources don't, your planners and schedulers don't have to leave Maximo either. They're right there in Maximo. The information is there, and so there's fewer tools for them to have to learn, navigate, and function through. The licensing for the scheduler is separate, but it is, again, already part of the install when you install Maximo. Optimization within the graphical scheduler is also available and is installed at the time that you install Maximo. However, if you want to start to use the optimization tool, it does require knowing your business rules, being able to standardize your business rules, and to also define your business rules so that you can set up those rules within the system and have them consistently applied within the optimization tool. Some other important things to remember is that your asset and location information is right there as well. And there are so many ways to build SQL queries without knowing much SQL at all. There's multiple tools within Maximo to help you build those queries. So therefore, that's a pretty low cost with a quick return on investment when you do implement graphical scheduling and graphical assignment within Maximo. All right, so let's look at Maximo. So I've already logged in as myself, and I'm going to use the shortcut navigation, my recent applications, to take us to some of the records that we're going to be looking at. So right now I'm going to take us over to the work order tracking application, and I have a query that I've already set up. I just have to find it. Here we go. All right, so I've already created a query, and I'm just going to go look at the where clause for that query. And so I was able to set this query up very quickly without having to type very much. So I was able to use my advanced search to look for work orders in a certain status, and with certain dates nulled out, I was able to then go in and I tweaked the query just a little bit. I wanted to look for work orders that had an estimated duration greater than 0. So that was the one little piece to the query that I added. I'll go look at that again with you. Pretty easy, pretty simple stuff for most IT savvy people. So I'm just going to go show one of the work orders. What I'm doing is I'm going to navigate down to show you that right now my scheduling information is blank. I have no target start, no target finish, no scheduled start, no scheduled finish. And this work order has 3-hour duration on it. So what I want to do now is to go over to the labor application and show you what it looks like. So I created a little query again. And this one is a little messy, but it was all just clicking on data elements. This one I wrote absolutely 0 SQL myself. I used the Maximo tool to build all of that for me. I just used my advanced search and told Maximo what I wanted to filter on to get this information, which gave me 27 labor records that I'm going to, so I'm going to just say these are the resources that I have available to me to perform the work associated with the work orders that I have filtered as well. So along with having a calendar defined, that then gets us to our schedule. So I built a little schedule earlier today, and I brought in that little query that I showed you earlier for my work, and I brought in the little query that I had for labor. I brought that in as well. And so that's what these two queries or filters are going to do for me, is they're going to limit the work orders that I'm looking at, only the work orders that I'm interested in scheduling, and they are going to limit the labor records to the labor records that I am responsible for making sure I have the schedule set correctly for those particular labor records. These are built, these are configured based on your business requirements, so everybody's wear conditions are just a little bit different. Some other information associated with the schedule tab. So you would give it a name and a description, and then you have the ability to say, I want it based on asset, location, or work. In this case, we're going to go with work. I would say probably 90% are usually associated with work. Then you would identify the calendar and shifts that are associated with this particular schedule. In this case, I'm going with a single calendar and a single shift. You can have multiple shifts, including offset shifts. There's no limit. So you can have your standard Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You can have odd work week. You can bring all of those different shifts in. The only caveat is that you would need to have your resources associated with the correct shift. That is one tie that you would need to make sure you have in your labor data, is that your calendar and shifts are associated with the labor that you're bringing over. Another item that's of importance over on this particular sub-tab, the details sub-tab on the schedule tab, is the ability to roll this project. And this is a concept that is often misunderstood, and I try to explain it as if you are looking at a screen or through a lens. And so our lens in this particular case is October 23rd to November 6th. See our dates. So right now we would be looking at that lens. And then when we decide to roll our project or our screen of focus, it would move, in this case, one day at a time. So if I had a cron task running in the background every day at midnight, let's say as an example, then tomorrow when I open this schedule, the start date would be the 24th and the end date would be the 7th. It just rolls that focused view across the calendar based on how you set it up. So I could have it roll once a week, and so then it would my next area of focus would be a week later, and then also, and that's something that some organizations want to use and others don't. That's why you have this option here. Some more information that would be useful for scheduling. I have the ability to have my schedules private or public. If it's public, then anyone who has access to the application has access to look at this schedule. So sometimes schedulers will have a few private schedules that they work out what if. That can also be done with a scenario, but that's pretty common actually as well. I also check refresh when opening Gantt view. Now this is something that if your organization doesn't have the heftiest server on the planet, you may not want to check that particular checkbox and then just use refresh schedule to manually run a refresh on your schedule. This will eat up a little bit of resources. It's not overly burdensome, but it can affect performance, as in you'll watch it spin just a little bit. Some other things that is of importance is that we load data based on this information here. So I have the ability to load and look at my information, my schedule information based on shift, daily, weekly, or monthly. I also have the ability to load additional resources. In this particular demo, I'm not going to do that, but you can look at alternate resource availability if that's something that your organization would use. So now we're going to take the information from our queries and we're going to present that in a graphical view. Usually takes a couple of moments to render. It has a lot of data to go through to render for us. So one thing I like to do when I'm looking at my schedule information is I usually close my side navigation so that I get the best view possible. And so we're looking at 4 quadrants. Let me move this up just a little bit so that you can get a better view of the quadrants. So we're looking at 4 quadrants. The one in the top left-hand side has all of my work order related information. So it has start date, end date. It has some like duration, priority, that kind of information for me. It also spells out who my resources, what's the demand on the resources. I'm looking at only waiting scheduling, some location information. Now this is configurable, and it's also configurable by the end user if you give them permissions to do so. So if your end user has permissions to do so, they can do things like move a column, so moving priority. So I'm more interested in priority than I am in the start date, or maybe I'm more interested in the duration. So I can move duration, I can move priority around. Another piece is, an important piece is that this particular listing is also definable and configurable by the end user and by your IT department or whoever is doing your support of Maximo. They can add fields for me to choose from. So the IT department could add fields for me to choose from. I also have a larger list of fields that I could check and uncheck based on what I want to see. So I have the ability to configure my my list of options as well. Here we go, my display options. So I can check and uncheck data that I would want to see or not want to see. And then that configuration is saved. So the next time I come into this schedule, it would display, it would render based on how I set this information up. So again, a lot of end users, they'll put the information they want to see right up here, right at all the way to the left, and that gives them the information they need to have to move and get this schedule moved around to how it would work best for the company, for their business. So that's the top left. The top right side has the graphical representation of the work order. Notice that if you were to hover over, it gives you the full short description. You can also right click and get more details and view notes, move this around, those kinds of pieces of information. You can also right click on the work order number and even navigate to the work order tracking application or see other pieces of information while you're here as well. as well as things like changing status, things like that. So you have the ability to, one or more records, you have the ability to make updates here in the graphical scheduling application, that you also have the ability to update over in the work order tracking application. So there's a few pretty common actions that take place in the work order tracking application that you can update here, and that's a real life update over. So now we're looking at the bottom left-hand corner, the bottom left-hand quadrant. That is the list of resources associated with the demand in the work order, and then this information to our right uses that filter that I use to bring data over to let me know how I'm doing as far as moving work around and how I am loaded with work and how much time I have available. So maybe I can, with this particular view, I could definitely pull some work in because I am way under, but I wanted you to be able to see the information. So the yellow identifies how much resource availability I have, and the purple represents the work that I have. So in this particular view, I wanted it to be really obvious, the difference, so that you could see it. But as work is getting moved in to fill that particular craft, now we're not looking at a person right now, we're looking at a craft. But as that work comes in and fills this up, then you start to see less and less yellow. We have a couple of pieces of functionality that relate the bottom half and the top half. One that I use a lot is if I'm in a situation where I have more demand or more work than I have resources. So I'm in this kind of situation here. What I will do is I will check the craft, and then I will filter the work based on my craft filter, and that shows me the work that I would need to then drag into a different day, and that way I am now not leaving that work behind. I'm bringing it actually forward, and then I have the resource. I'm bringing it in, and it shows me what the demand is going to be on the resource based on the drag that I just performed. I can also filter, and what I'm going to do is uncheck this and just show you a few ways to filter. Up here, let's say all I wanted to do was see work associated with the word inspect. I could type that word in and then apply my filter, and so now I'm only looking at work associated with the word inspect. I can also, down at the individual level, I can, this sorted it up. I can also open these filters up, and let's say I want to only look at work orders in priority 5. So what I would do here is I would put the 5 in play, and there we go. I'm only looking at work in priority 5. I'm going to clear my filters. All right, so those are some ways that I would use to move, some functionality that I would use to move work around. There's also these icons, plenty of icons up here to learn. These two are associated with applying a filter and clearing the filter. New to recent releases of Scheduler is this ability to undo that last thing that I did. Maybe I didn't really mean it, so I could just undo that last thing that I did. I also have the ability to expand and collapse my rows. So this one is a work order with its task associated. I could either expand or contract here, collapse here. These icons are associated with zooming in and out. So if I wanted to zoom to a particular day or a particular week, if I just wanted to manually zoom in or zoom out, I have the ability to zoom to fit to the page. That's another good one. And I'm going to go back to zooming to the day. And then I have the ability to lock our durations. That's a good one. If you are prone, which I am, if you are prone to accidentally, instead of moving the work, if you're prone to moving the duration, you may want to lock your durations. And then this icon is associated with those dependencies that I was talking about earlier. And then we have the ability to sort by, you can sort the work based on resource and then the resource based on the work. And then these last few icons are associated with dependencies as well, spacing out your work based on your dependencies. All right, so one of the things I wanted to show you was that right now I've moved work around and I may have changed statuses and I may have performed some other activities on the work orders, but what I have not done is committed these work orders I have not committed to a schedule start date. So what I want to do now is show you what it looks like it's not behaving. So what I want to do now, there we go, is show you what it looks like when you commit the scheduled start. So right now I've moved this work around, but I have not committed to the scheduled start date yet. So what I would do, I like to save early, save often. So to commit the scheduled start date, you would identify which work orders you wanted to commit. You can use the checkbox at the top to select all or to unselect all. In this case, I want to select all. So I'm going to check the box, click the commit changes. So we're just going to look at that first one, 1,000. Work order 1,000, we'll go look at the scheduled start date. So going to look at the record that we just committed, and there's our scheduled start date. So it was able to populate the scheduled start date for us. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is just a peek into the graphical assignment application. In the graphical assignment application, that work that you just scheduled out, notice that this tab looks the same. It's very similar, so training into one gets you training into the other. And then there's these two tabs that show you that work in two different ways. So the first one we're going to look at is the work view. So here's my work orders with unassigned work. That's the color coding for unassigned work. When I assign this work, so I would right click. So one approach, again, this is just one approach. I can right click and Maximo will filter available labor that is available to do this work and meets the craft and skill requirements. So I can come in and look at, okay, let's see, what do we have available? I think I'm going to give this work to this particular individual, and notice that the work then goes green. So I can go through and let's say I want to assign this work, like multiple work to the same individual. I can highlight and drag, and I just dragged a rectangle around. Oh, there we go. And this way I can just go to parts and look at part of the work and assign that way as well. Again, it goes green. So that's looking at it from the work view. So here's the list of work orders. Here they are graphically represented, and I can just go through and I can select a work order and then assign it that way. Some people prefer that approach. Some people prefer the assignment view where I do drag and drop. Notice that these two work orders have been assigned, and that's why they're green. Now I have the ability to look at my group this way and drag and drop the work, and again going green. We have color coding over here where green means it's good. You have selected an individual that meets the criteria. They have time available in their schedule to do the work. You have not overloaded them or double booked or anything like that. Now, if I try to double book this person, Maximo lets me know with some color coding again with some yellow. And if I break really hard rules, then it goes red on me. So in this case, I would just undo and then try again. Here we go. So those are the graphical scheduling and graphical assignment applications at a high level.
Thank you for watching our webinar on Maximo Scheduler. You can access more resources just like this by visiting our website at www.cohesivesolutions.com, where we frequently populate blogs and webinars with both strategic and technical tips and tricks from our Maximo and industry experts.